Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Here we're going to have another sofa edition of the podcast. We're going to talk about an incident that happened back in 2012. Yesterday, I had an interview with a woman from Germany. Now, she wants to remain anonymous, and so we're going to call her Zelda. That's going to be the pseudonym that we're going to use for this person. She was a very pleasant woman to talk to, and she had a very strange story to tell of an incident that occurred in 2012 while she was sitting on the balcony with a male friend. We'll call him Thomas. And again, this was in the summertime around August of 2012. And she said that she had during this day that she had just gone through a breakup, and her friend came over to talk with her, and they were talking all day. They had a good time, and then they were sitting out on the balcony talking for a while, and then they just sat there in silence for a while, just enjoying each other's company, enjoying the night. And then she noticed something very strange. She saw this brilliant white orb that was hovering near some buildings, coming close, moving toward their position. And at first, she didn't want to say anything. She was thinking, am I seeing something here? Am I seeing things? She didn't want to say anything at first, right? But then this orb, this brilliantly bright white orb, and it was only probably about the size of a little bit bigger than a softball, the way she described it. It was smaller than a soccer ball, somewhere in between a soccer ball and a softball, but it wasn't that large. It was pretty small, according to Zelda. And this object floated all the way up to she was on the fourth. They were sitting on the fourth floor balcony of her apartment building, and where she lived. She didn't want me to name the city because she's really afraid of people finding out she's in Germany, of her talking about her UFO experience, because she says in Germany a lot of people. They frown upon UFO stories, and she's afraid of people thinking she's crazy. So basically where she was living very close to a military base, the Rittersturz-Kaserne military base. That's where she was living, close by. It was a small city near this military base, about 3 kilometers away. And anyway, they were sitting on the balcony, and this orb, it just traversed all the way up to the fourth floor where they were sitting. And when it got right in front of them, was only within a meter of where they were, right? And so that's only that's 3 feet. For those out there who want to know what a meter is, it's like 3 feet and 3 inches, about somewhere around there. So it was within a meter. It was that close it got to them. And that's when she finally decided to say something to her friend. She said, and she was going to say, Thomas, do you see this? But the only word she got out was Thomas, right? When she said Thomas, this thing, it reacted. It moved back and forth, left and right really fast, and then zipped away around this other building. So now, just so you understand what this was like, I put this little short clip together that has a diagram of how this was set up. I'll play this right now. Check it out. Check this out. Okay, in this is a little diagram that Zelda had provided during our discussion, and you can see here this is the path that this orb traveled toward the fourth floor of her apartment back in 2012. You could see this is where they were sitting on. This is where the balcony was right here. Her and her friend Thomas were sitting on the balcony, and she noticed off to the side here that there was an orb, and she didn't say anything at first. She saw it traveling, just moving it up, like having a good old time, just checking things out or whatever. That's what it seemed like to her. She didn't want to say anything because she was concerned that maybe she was seeing things. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, so she didn't say anything to her friend. Not until it got to this point right here, and that's where she said his name, Thomas. But right when she said his name, the thing went back and forth like there's somebody there, and it whoop, real quickly went behind this other building. It just took off like in a zip, like in an instant it was gone. She saw it instantly take off and go around this building that was across the street from her. So this is where they were sitting. This is where the objects she saw start, where it first arrived. She noticed it coming up here, and then it got to this point here, and then it reacted and went back and forth, left and right, and then just zoop, like it reacted to the sound of her voice. That's what it felt like to her. Like there was it was conscious. This thing. That's what she said. It was like it had a consciousness. She said this thing seemed conscious. right? It seemed like it was thinking, like it was alive. That's what it seemed like to her. That was very strange, and she really didn't want to really talk about this with other people that she knows, because in Germany, this kind of subject seems more frowned upon than it does here, like in the United States and other countries of the world, according to Zelda. But so this thing seemed like it had a conscience. So she described the way it moved. Right, it was like she said, if in the animated movie Finding Nemo and the sequel, there was the character Dory, and Dory, she said it was like Dory, just like a fish, just enjoying itself out for a swim in the ocean. That's what it seemed like it was. This thing was doing, just stuck out there, just having a nice old time. And then when it got to where Zelda and her friend Thomas were sitting, and she said something, was the sound of her voice seemed to cause this thing to react like it was surprised, and like it didn't know what to do at first. It went back and forth, left and right really fast, and then zipped around the building and was gone. But one of the strangest aspects to this whole story was when they were talking about it afterward, after this event happened. Now, in Zelda's mind, what she saw was this white orb, right? That's what she saw, right? It was that's what it looked like to her. But from Thomas's point of view, that's not what it looked like to him. It looked like an oval, greenish thing, green colored and hollowed out. It was a different shape, and it was a different color, and it was somewhat hollow. That was his description of this. So they both saw something, but their point of view, it was different. Whatever the object looked different to each of these people, which is very strange. I mean, it reminds me of a different story that we learned about 5 years ago from the great Jacques Vallée, which I'll talk about in a second, where somebody took a picture of an object and it wasn't the same, but the picture turned out to be totally different than what they saw with their own eyes. But this is a little bit different than that, because here, okay, Zelda sees a white orb, right? This glowing white orb, but Thomas sees a hollow kind of object that's oval shaped and green. I don't understand that. I wonder if these things, maybe we think we're seeing what we see some of these things, right? And maybe, well, to everyone's individual point of view of what they're seeing is different sometimes, it seems, with these objects. But this is a strange story. Now, I actually had another story. This is another anecdotal story from someone I know, someone whose sister lives in New Jersey, and they had orbs coming in the house, sometimes multiple orbs coming in the house. They just deal with this, and they seem like they're alive. I've heard this story. So there's weird stories with orbs. I mean, I'm wondering, are they living things? I mean, I know some people talk about possibly like living plasma and things like that. I just don't know. I don't understand this. But this woman, Zelda, in Germany, that experience was very strange. And it wasn't over after that night. Actually, about a week later, she was in bed. And she sleeps at the time when she was in this apartment, she was on the 4th floor, and she was in her bedroom. And all of a sudden, late at night, the whole room became illuminated. Right, and there was where she lived at in this apartment. There's no way cars could shine their lights in or anything like that. So this light, whatever it was, came out of nowhere, and it was the only time something like this ever happened while she was living in this place. And she thought that this was connected to her. Connected to what happened the week before, but that was the only things that ever happened. That she's the weird experiences with regard to this orb. So she had the main sighting was when she was with her friend Thomas talking on the balcony, and then a week later another incident happened. Now she didn't actually see the orb this time, but she saw the light. There was just no way. She said the way she described it, there was no way that it could have been any light from a highway, because where she lived at, there was not a lot of roads or anything like that. It wasn't a heavily traveled area, right? And again, this light was extremely bright. She saw the whole wall where she was facing became extremely bright all of a sudden, and she wonders to this day if that was the orb, and she thinks it probably was. But again, you have to wonder, are these orbs living things, or are they things that are operated by the beings themselves? Maybe they're, something like, is it something that's remote controlled, right? What was it doing? What was it doing there? What was it looking for? Was it just out for a stroll? I mean, what's going on with these orbs? I mean, people talk about orbs a lot, most of the stories you hear, they're really far away. You don't really know what they're doing, and sometimes they'll move in strange ways. But sometimes they'll have people have close up encounters with these things, and according to Zelda, it sounds like they might be conscious creatures. Maybe they're living creatures. I mean, we really can't say. Or are they some sort of remote control object that's being operated by these NHI that are among us? Obviously, we know that for a fact, right? Based on the evidence that we have, the evidence that we talk about all the time on this show, we actually have absolute proof now that shows that we're not alone. And you have to wonder, is there a connection between these orbs and that, or is that something totally different? These are all questions we have no answers to, and maybe someday the scientific community will be able to provide us those answers. We'll have to wait and see. But regarding what I was talking about before with the case from that Jacques Vallée discussed, actually it was an event called Contact in the Desert. It was several years ago, 5, 6 years, I can't remember, something like that, 5, 6 years ago. I'll leave a link to the Jacques Vallée's discussion with this in the description so you could check it out. But in that, he was making a presentation. He was talking about this incident that happened in 2017 in the Brittany region of France. And this is pulled directly from that video. This is what Vallée said about this. He said in July 2017 in Brittany, on a bright afternoon, this woman who apparently was having issues with aliens. She actually had marks on her body, strange kind of concentric circles on her body. You have to check out this entire discussion that Vallée presented several years ago, where he talks about that. But anyway, so this person was apparently already being visited by beings, right? Anyway, and this happened again in the Brittany region of France. So it was in July 2017. It was a bright afternoon, and this woman, she was driving with her daughter, who was sitting in the back, and another friend of her daughter's who was a teenager. And the car was, and her main car was being fixed, right? So they had this car, it had a sunroof on it. And so, and the owner had an open roof. I mean, there was glass, but you could see the sky from the inside of the car, which is why the case becomes interesting, because they saw this large disc. It was a gray disc in the middle of the afternoon over this expressway, flying over toward them, and eventually flew slowly over the car at a low altitude. It was a very clear gray disc, according to Vallée. And this woman saw this thing coming. Everyone in the car saw this flying saucer, a gray colored flying saucer. That's what they were all seeing right at the same time, and it was flying in broad daylight over the highway, and there must have been other cars there too. And then when it got over their car, she handed their phone back to the kid in the back seat and instructed him to take a picture. This is what Vallée writes. He says, they saw a large gray disc in the middle of the afternoon over the expressway, flying over towards them, and eventually flew slowly over the car at a low altitude. It was a very clear gray disc. She saw that coming. Again, she's a very smart, quick businesswoman, no nonsense. She gave her camera to the kid in the back and said, take a picture, I'm driving. The kid took a picture. And then Vallée showed the picture, and what you see in the picture was this star-shaped object. Now, I know I talked about this several years ago on one of the shows, but I still find this amazing. So they saw a gray-colored flying disc in the sky, but when they took the picture, it looked like this star. I'm going to put that up on the screen right now so you can see it. And Vallée goes on to say, he says, this is a picture. Let me blow it up. There was a spot on the cloud that may or may not be a shadow of the object. The object is far away from them, and it's not a disc. It's not a gray disc. It looks, you could say, like it's like a drone. It's a drone, but it doesn't look like a drone. It's dark. It's under the cloud, although it's projecting on the other cloud. And I have absolutely no idea why the picture she took didn't show what she saw. And again, we have other cases like that, except the witnesses are reluctant to produce them because they look silly. I mean, I took a picture of something. Well, where's the picture? Well, it didn't show anything. Well, okay. Or it showed something that had no relationship to what the person is describing to me. And I've had a few experiences like that before, but never with the actual proof. And here we have the proof of of this. That's what he went on to say. He says, first, I believe this woman. She and I have met. I've met with her several times. She has been in my place in Paris. We reinvestigated the case with the friends of mine who are part of the advisory board for the French Space Agency. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, that's something similar, but again, another strange aspect of this entire phenomenon of these strange visitors. What are they doing? Why are they doing these? How are they able to do it? I mean, okay, first in the valet story, right? They see a gray disc, they take a picture of it. It's not a disc in the picture, it's star-shaped object. And then in the Zelda story, we have two people sitting on a balcony, a fourth floor balcony in a small city in Germany back in 2012, and this object just flies up to them, and they see something different. One sees a round orb, bright white, right? Perfect, brilliantly white in her mind. Her friend sitting right beside her, there's only this little table in between them. He sees some greenish oval-shaped object that gets somewhat hollowed out. So they saw different things at the same time. That's weird. Too bad she didn't get a picture of it, unfortunately. I guess it happened so fast and it just caught. See, this is what happened. People complain all the time about people not having pictures sometimes, or the pictures are blurry, or this is what happens. People, it catches you off guard. You never expect it. When these things happen, you don't see it coming. Just like my incident back in the mid 1990s. And actually, I need to make a correction. I meant to do this a few episodes ago, and I keep forgetting. Anymore, I'm just going to say the mid 90s. I used to say 1994, but I made a mistake. I was looking. I wanted to make sure. I was looking at this. I used to think it was 1994 when I had my UFO encounter near Hazleton, Pennsylvania. But it had to be either 1995 or 96. I'm not even going to say what. It had to be in the mid 90s, but it couldn't have been 1994. And the reason I know this is because the incident that happened, that was the first time I ever was in a Walmart. On the way to this fishing trip, me and my friend Scott, he called me up earlier in the day, and he asked me if I wanted to go fishing. He had permission to go fishing at this private lake. Was called Beach Mountain Lakes. It's near this city in Pennsylvania called Hazleton. And I said, yeah, it sounds great. We're going to go night fishing. And he said he didn't want to go fishing at the lake. He wanted to go fishing at the pond. There's a small pond next to the lake, and that's where we went fishing. And so on the way, right, we stopped at Walmart in Hazleton to get snacks and drinks and iced tea and stuff like that. So and then we went off, and then we had our UFO encounter. I'll talk about that in a second. But the reason I know it couldn't have been 1994 now, because I just found out just recently that Walmart in Hazleton didn't open up until 1995, so it couldn't have been 1994. This incident happened. It was in August. I know that. The first time I actually talked about this story publicly was in 2002, and I was working at a newspaper in Iowa at the time. And I was trying to figure out what year. You try to remember what year was that exactly. And I remember talking to a couple of people, and I remember settling on 1994. It must have been 1994 then. Obviously, that was wrong. So all these years, I've been making this mistake for all these years. It was probably 1995, maybe even 1996, but I don't think so. I think it was probably 1995. I know that was the first time I was ever in a Walmart that day. And then of course, with that story, what happened? We were sitting there. And we're fishing, for hours and hours, right? Nothing. We were catching nothing. We're in the middle of nowhere, right? It was like a private community at this Beach Mountain Lakes, and there was the lake, and we went to this pond that was off the lake, and it was complete blackness there, complete dark, right? And we're fishing, as we got there like late in the evening. It was like 6 o'clock, somewhere around there, 6 p.m. And we're fishing for hours and hours, not catching anything. At about 10 p.m., I turned around to get something out of my tackle box, and behind the pond where we were fishing, there was this open field with all this tall grass, and on the perimeter was a forest. And when I turned around, I saw these 3 giant bright lights hovering behind trees and it was moving toward this opening in the trees, right? And I said to my friend Scott, I said, Scott, what's that? And I never forget his response. He says, I don't know. And the no part was elevated because by this point, the thing was coming right toward us, right? And this thing was as big as a house with 3 big lights lined up horizontally, right? And it's coming right towards us. And then it stopped right in front of us. Scott was closer to it than I was. He grabbed his flashlight and he shined it on the bottom of this thing. And that's when I got scared. I thought this thing was going to land. And then who knows? I thought we were going to get abducted. I didn't know what was going to happen, right? So I said, Scott, let's get out of here, right? And we both start throwing all our stuff, the fishing stuff, in his back of his pickup truck, and then the objects start moving off in a different direction, parallel to the way it came, backward basically. but parallel to the way it came, and it was just, we were getting in the truck, and this thing was, still moving away from us. I could see it was very close to the treetops. I mean, there's no way, right? There is absolutely no way that this could have been man-made. There was absolutely no sound whatsoever, and no person would ever fly this close to trees in the first place. I mean, it was very close to the treetops. Now, Scott told me later on that the treetops were actually bending down. Now, I didn't see this. He saw that. And I couldn't see the shape of it from my position. I just saw the three big bright lights that were like right in front of me. It was within 20 feet. It was within 20 feet of where I was standing, this thing. Absolutely no sound. It was only 2.5 stories off the ground. And then, like I said, it was moving over these trees. Scott said the treetops were bending down. And then we get out of there. We're driving down this dirt road, and we had to stop, right? Because there was at least 20 deer. They were running away from the direction of where this thing just flew. And I don't know, maybe they're out there to take some deer, or maybe that's what they're looking for. I don't know. Maybe we almost got picked up, maybe we almost got mistaken for a deer or cattle, and or maybe that's what they're looking for. Then I have no idea. But the point I wanted to make about this is that back in those days, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have anything like that. I didn't have a camera or nothing, right? Didn't even think of that anyway, right? You don't even think of that stuff, right? That's just the point I'm trying to make, is that these things surprise you when it happens. It catches you completely off guard. You get, wow! I mean, you're going through your life all the time. It's like this routine, right? And there's surprises here and there, like regular old surprises, right? Somebody has got sick or whatever, and or somebody dies that it's always a surprise, right? But this catches you completely off guard, and takes you out of your element. You're not thinking about taking pictures. A lot of times, I don't think people have the time to process what's happening, and then sometimes they do. Those that do, they'll get a picture. A lot of times they'll turn out blurry or hard to see. But I just thought that I wanted to point that out. And one other thing I want to point out too was in the previous episode, I was talking about that the incident that happened in Finland back in 1914. I received, right before I started filming, I received an interesting comment. Let me see here. Bing Bong 7316. Now, the interesting thing about this story, if you saw that previous show, it was an incident that occurred in 1914. It was a grandmother and her grandson, and he was 10 years old, and they saw this weird craft all of a sudden showed up, this sphere with these two beings sitting inside the sphere, and the grandmother told the kid, hey, these are the air people. She knew all about them. Apparently she had encounters with them before. But right before it happened, and this kid, he didn't tell the story to anybody until 1972. He told it to a UFO researcher, right? He didn't tell that story till 1972. At that time, this guy was pushing 70, right? And he said that right before this happened, it got dark out like an eclipse. Now, I just want to point out that Bing Bong 7316 actually pointed out that an eclipse checks out. It said in the early afternoon of August 21st, 1914, there was an eclipse. So that was interesting, I thought. So this guy told this UFO researcher back in 72 that right before this incident happened, the sky got dark like there was an eclipse. There was an eclipse. So maybe this was that on that day. Maybe that's the exact day when this happened, perhaps. So I just thought that was interesting and something to throw out there. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.